Okay, today my group and I will be presenting on the chaos theory, the chaos theory of career development. And my group is me, Dessie Avila, and there's Cameron Chapman, Jason Dean, and Casey Spurlin. So, the development of chaos theory. The chaos theory was first published in 2003 and has evolved over time. It was Bright and Pryor's attempt to apply the idea of complex dynamical systems to individuals seeking to develop careers. And they wanted to do it in the context where development happens, or aka life. Bright and Pryor's was the main guys who developed this theory. They came out with a theory to address shortcomings of other traditional approaches, which includes other approaches did not incorporate potential influences on people's careers. Other approaches were too narrow in a sense of corresponding to the self-motivated, interactive, and adaptive nature of humans in the world and the career decision as well as taking career actions. The other approaches also did not acknowledge human tendency to interpret and construct experiences and perceptions into meaningful and unique explanatory structures for understanding themselves, their life experiences, and their world. So basically people's story. They didn't acknowledge how people interpret life events and make a story out of it. Also, other approaches did not include unplanned and unpredictable events and experiences, which are sometimes vital and influential in picking a career, or so Pryor and Bright thought. And so basically Pryor and Bright thought that the other theories did not relate well to how life is actually lived. And the other theories answered immediate challenges of making career decisions, and that was it. They didn't answer any of the complexity of life. The big research question Bright and Pryor wanted to know was, why should the influences on career development be different from those that are brought about life? That was their big research question. And this was really great because they received a research grant, so they got to explore this. They had a big problem in naming their theory. At one point they thought about naming their theory as natural theory of careers and several other names, but it never captured what they had in mind in their theoretical framework. So they came up with a formulation that would encompass their theory, and that was context, complexity, connection, change, and chance. And after researching further, they were led to realms of more general science rather than exclusive boundaries of just career development. This proved to be chaotic, hence chaos theory's name was born. The name was also really encompassing the world as having a complex dynamical system. The system is to help clients understand their life stories as well as show them how their career choices are another big part of their story. So that was the whole point of the chaos theory. So there it is, the main point: to help clients understand their life stories and career paths are interconnected. Anything can happen. Career change and paths can be due to anything like the economy, present job market, media, family, and a lot of other factors. Bright and Pryor and Harfin did a study in 2005 in the Journal of Vocational Behavior, and this study said that 70% of people that a chance event changed their career. So 70% of people say that a chance event changed their career. These chance events can be anything from injury or a health problem to accidentally working in the field you enjoy, or working in a field you don't enjoy accidentally. Most career paths are not linear. Being in a university setting, a myth is that the major you pick will lead you to your one forever career goal, and that simply just isn't true. There isn't one path, and a lot of unexpected chaotic factors, life factors, can happen and alter that path for you. Even if the event wasn't or isn't chaotic, life events can alter decisions on careers every day. And that's what Bright and Pryor's theory is about, the unpredictability of life in relation to career decision making.
Hello everyone, this is Casey Spurlin. I will be handling the complexity, fractal patterns, and emergence portions of the chaos theory of career development. Some of these words are probably going to be intermingled with other theories, and I know I will be talking and bringing up some points that some of the other group mates have brought up in their presentations. This theory is so intermingled and interwound with each other, so just a little bit of a heads up. We're going to jump right in with complexity. So complexity is an idea that there's complex factors when considering any sort of career development. That is making sure that we are taking in all these factors into consideration. And the chaos theory of complexity can be influenced by many factors. It's not just going to be one. It may not just be the society or the day and age or the person, and there's a multitude of factors. And we want to also take into consideration multiple perspectives. You know, this is people, this is experience. These are all these things that will really add to the person's choices when it comes to their career development. A great quote that I found in one of the articles by Pryor and Bright. This particular article is titled The Chaos Theory of Careers, or CTC, and it's subtitled 10 Years On and Only Just Begun, because this is a very new theory, as we have touched on in this presentation. And it was that, you know, the reality of failure is fundamental to dealing with an uncertain world. Everything's changing and it's complex, and we'll talk about the fractal patterns, which will play right into this, and things emerging from it. And so these three topics are really codependent of each other, and making sure that we understand this idea and this functionality. So we're going to continue with complexity. Pryor and Bright created a list of 9 things for a strategy using the complexity theory. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through these in the study guide. I kind of made it to where we could fill in the blank. So the first step in this strategy is to work out what really matters now and how work fits into that. And I know we've talked about that in other discussion posts and from Dr. Donald, but you know, that's a very realistic expectation that we're setting for ourselves. What matters now and how our life, our work, our family is all going to fit into that. Then we have to keep our mind open to opportunities. So keep your mind open. When we start shutting down walls and we're working with clients and they only want to do one thing, it can become very challenging, and we want to make sure that we keep a very open mind to all of our opportunities. That way we have the opportunity to become more successful, instead of just making it to where we are limited on our opportunities. Then we're going to generate and try several opportunities, many of them. The more we try, the more opportunities we might have. And then we're going to move to the expectation that some of them are going to fail. And then even more so, that making failure survivable. Not everything is going to go successfully. Not everything is going to go according to plan. So these steps are really outlining, you know, the human factor of this. And that's kind of once again why this theory goes back to is humans, and in this day and age and where we are now. So being okay with failure and being okay to move on to if that failure does come is a huge part of any successful expectation set up between a client and the counselor or any person. And then we're going to seek and examine feedback to learn what works and what doesn't. We want to utilize that, and what the study guide says is utilizing what works and examining what emerged. That's the next little step here. In order to get once again be successful with this strategy of complexity, because there are many steps in any action that we take in career development, getting that feedback and then kind of analyzing it, making sure that it's what we want it to be, and making the best decision. And then we're going to combine and take what information that we've gained and take it to what's likely going to improve our career aspects. You don't want to be focused on something that you know you're not going to be successful at, or you may have failed at, and try again, and therefore you were successful. And then the last step is to go back to step 1. You know, if you get to step 8 and you realize, hey, this was not successful, this is not what I wanted to accomplish, start back at the stage at 1, and we will continue in this cycle in order to make all clients successful. Fractal patterns, so they are a complex, irregular system within other systems affecting career development. That kind of sounds confusing and redundant, but they are basically the literal patterns that of things happening. They are evident from complex dynamical systems, and these things include, you know, the individual traits, the labor market trends, family influences, employer prejudices. You know, these are all things that will patternize themselves to have somebody affect their career development. This quote by van der Ven, that was another article I utilized for my material. She did it on kind of gearing fractal patterns, and actually it's called chaos complexity theory. She merges them together, and we'll talk about that in a few slides. In just the interdisciplinary and early education of being a teacher. And so that's where she ended up doing this, and I got it from the Journal of Early Education, or Early Childhood Teacher Education. But she quotes fractals as a complex, irregular boundary with underlying self-similarity at all levels of scale. So once again, going back to the idea that things are going to appear and it's going to be very complex, going back to that complexity idea, and making sure that we are aware and figuring out these fractal patterns with our clients moving toward their career development. Continuing with fractals, they're going to, like I said in the previous slide, they're going to have patterns that emerge. We're going to be able to find, you know, what the similarity is and how they do it. And Bright and Pryor say, you know, a person's life is fractal and a career is embedded fractal within a larger pattern. So just think of it like a cake and layers. You know, we've got a layer and a layer and a layer, and we might find some sort of pattern, and it's going to come out, and we can address it. But overall, you know, there is a fractal in a fractal and a fractal and a fractal, and it's extremely complex and just becomes bigger. And then as you think of the person's interactions in the world, they're going to change and develop and really move towards maybe even a whole new understanding of what the person wants to accomplish. And moving to the final topic of emergence, Bright and Pryor describe it as the occurrence of a new discernible order of a series of apparently random events. This dovetails very nicely off of fractal patterns, you know, a fractal within a fractal creating this new pattern. Well, this is when the pattern will literally emerge, and us as the people and the people actually experiencing this theory, we can discover what it is. You know, it's when a new order of seemingly random events occurs. It's called emergence. So we really want to make sure that we discover this, and this complexity perception index was something created by Bright and Pryor, and this is where, you know, there's actually multiple things of the chaos theory all coming together. You know, we've got the 4 attractors mentioned by Cam, we've got emergence, which I kind of touched on, just basically figuring out what all this stuff coming together means. Non-linearity we'll touch on in the next slide, and then complexity and spirituality, which also was touched on by Cam. So to give a little credit also to Miss van der Ven, who was the writer of the article from the Journal of Early Childhood Teacher Education. It was written in 1997, which is, a significant time ago. It's, at this point, 20 years. Holy cow. And she made these correlations of the chaos theory, and she also called it the complexity theory, so she just hash marked it. They're open and dynamic. They're constantly changing. They are concerned with pattern, with the fractal, and then that emergence of the chaos as it develops, and as the person is able to create those steps that we talked about on a couple slides ago. And then she also talked about linearity, and that's, it's the norm, while chaos and complexity seem to be the reality. And we will touch that on the next slide. So this slide, it's titled The Linear and Chaos Complexity Worldviews, and it's going to be some examples, and I got this from Ms. Vanderven's article in the journal. And basically, so what this nonlinearity is talking about, and I'm kind of going off the slides here, but so think of linear, think of the norm. Once again, it's the norm, while chaos and complexity seem to be the reality, and that's what we're going to touch on. So I'm going to present a linear idea, and then we're going to talk about the chaos and complexity worldviews. So linear says, it seeks to predict. And, and this is from our perspective as human beings, and it's, the chaos and complexity worldview is we recognize that many occurrences are sudden and unpredictable. Life is going to happen. We would love to be able to predict what's going to happen next, however, not the reality. So the linear perspective, the amount of input is proportional to the expected output, and we're kind of taught that as, you tell us, or they tell us in school, and especially in grade school, I remember being told, what we put in is what we're going to get out. If you put in a little bit of work, you're going to get a little bit out of it. If you put a lot of work in, you're going to get a lot out. And not in reality. A small input may actually have a much greater output, or vice versa. A very large amount of input may only suffice a very small output. And then, we as human beings, we seek to solve problems by control. And in reality, we recognize that control efforts may lead to the intensification of a problem. You're not always going to get what you want. We want to be problem solvers, and we want to fix things, and each personality is a little bit different on how we do that. But in order to fix this, we want to make sure that we recognize that our control isn't always our control. The last one here is, that we want to seek simple and rational solutions. And then we have the idea that this addresses complex problems without the simple solutions. So we're coming in with a huge problem, big issue, and sometimes it may just be a very simple fix, and we don't realize that. So this is all, once again, going back to Vanderven, and I think this is a great way for us to think of how we would see it in the perfect world, and how the chaos theory and the complexity of the chaos theory really morphs that. The final bit here, I really wanted to tie in because Bright and Pryor make a big point in the end of this article that I used about cultural diversity. The chaos theory is new, but it seems to be a much more realistic expectation of our career development and career goals. And fortunately, it has been able to be globalized. We have been able to see it move from, these folks were originally from Australia. Well, clearly we're hearing about it in the United States. But, we have to think about the values that people are going to be encountering if they're in another country. The work, what they do, how they do it, where they do it, that's going to differ from being in the United States, in the Middle East, and that's just the very generic. Then you actually think about the true globalization and specific areas, and then we get into the idea of communicating with these, so knowing how to communicate on a professional level globally, and then the tradition that may stand. There are some countries that have traditional positions and jobs and careers that are held by certain people, or there's an expectation of tradition that the family maintains this business, and so we move towards this idea, and they really did make a large emphasis on it. And this final point here, you know, culture is conceived as a chaos theory. We are a bunch of different people constantly changing as one. And so, you know, as we emerge to create this idea, you know, we have to think of it from the counseling perspective. You know, there is this expectation of the perfect job and the perfect person and the perfect everything, and that's not reality. I feel like that's the whole undertone of this theory, is that it's very realistic and that we are constantly dynamic. It's a dynamic conceptualization of change, and that doesn't always work out for folks. So we, you know, as when we think of it from the counseling perspective, we have this framework and this understanding that we are going to be constantly changing. So then we go back to these steps and these theories that of the ideas that build on the chaos theory of career development, and hopefully we are able to be successful with our clients to help them discern what they want to do with it as their career develops through this chaos theory.
Hello everybody. Next I will be covering attraction and attractors. So the concept of attraction is an important particulate of the chaos theory of career counseling, or abbreviated CTC. Chaos theory is centered around responding to changes in an individual's life. In chaos theory, attraction is the ability to create a clear self and maintaining this understanding of self when change occurs. Pryor and Bright define attractors as characteristic trajectories, feedback mechanism, end states, ordered boundness, reality visions, and equilibrium and fluctuation. I would like to point out that these attractors are described through patterns of behaviors. So to simplify that a little bit more, in general, attractors are patterns of behaviors that create constraint for the individual. Attraction can be divided into our 4 attractors, and those are the point attractor, the pendulum attractor, the torus attractor, and the strange attractor. Firstly, let's look at the point attractor. Of the attractors, the point attractor is the most simplistic. Point is a person or a thing that the client is attracted to. For example, this could be a vocational goal or any type of goal setting developed out of the client-counselor relationship. Bright and Pryor point out, well, no pun intended, that goals should not be too unrealistic or too narrow. The pendulum attractor constrains behavior by moving the individual from one extreme to another. This creates indecision within the client. A classic example of this is when a client keeps moving back and forth between 2 career pathways. This develops into an imbalance of career decision making. Bright and Pryor suggests that this attractor can usually be seen in clients with a rigid belief system. Next, we have the torus attractor. It is slightly more complex than the pendulum and point attractors. This attractor is characterized by repeated behavior that is constraining, and this repetitive behavior creates boredom for the client. Although with a torus attractor, a client may want to self-reflect on issues regarding meaningfulness and purpose. Often this is when a client, you'll see an example of this when the client is feeling stuck and kind of bored in their current career. Self-reflection has the possibility of being a driving force for personal change for the client. Lastly, the strange attractor is identified as an open system way of thinking. The other attractors are closed system thinking. For example, the client focuses heavily on structure, order, and stability in closed systems. However, the strange attractor is not like these other attractors, and the concept of this strange attractor is seen in general models of chaos theory. With that said, it is the most complex attractor. The strange attractor conceptualizes the idea that small behavioral changes, the micro level, can result in large changes, the macro level, for clients. Bright and Pryor expand on this by saying, recognizing the inherently unpredictable nature of their careers at the micro level and how this unpredictability can lead to possibilities at a macro level, clients can begin to develop strategies to deal with change and uncertainty at work. This kind of open system thinking promotes the ability for clients to accept and grow. To summarize, attractors are patterns of behaviors which could be nonlinear or linear that influence a client's decision making. One important aspect of the chaos theory of career counseling is spirituality. According to CTC, career counselors should take into account spirituality regarding their clients. Pryor and Bright identified 5 spiritual dimensions: connection, purpose, transcendence, harmony, and calling. The first spiritual dimension in CTC is connection. This examines how people are connected to their external world. Connection focuses on how we are interconnected with human community, world, and universe. Connection is how we experience events in this world. Connection is not only how we are connected with our community and our culture, but also how we are connected with ourselves. This internal connection with ourselves is referring to self-awareness. By becoming more self-aware, an individual can explore more career possibilities that may feel more fitting. The second spiritual dimension in CTC is purpose. Purpose focuses on a sense of meaning and significance. As human beings, we seek meaning in life. When a person is seeking a career or a person is already in a selected career, purposefulness can be an important particulate for that person. What kind of meaning does this career provide to a client? Does the client find that this kind of work is significant? These kinds of questions could be beneficial for a client. The more meaning a career is to a person, then perhaps more likely they will continue to partake or pursue that career. However, it is important to keep in mind the cultural context of that client. Originally, work was primarily about survival. People grew crops, collected fruit, and hunted animals for food. While survival remains a major motivation to work, in richer countries, where individuals can choose between the types of work, other criteria for decisions become more salient. These criteria may be practical, such as knowing others who work there, or that the work site is close to home. The third spiritual dimension is transcendence, and this puts an emphasis on the idea that there is a greater power beyond our understanding. This could be a form of a god or a power such as love or universal good. Although I'd like to mention, there appears to be a lack of research regarding transcendence from a CTC perspective. The fourth spiritual dimension is harmony, and in my opinion, I believe that this is the most important spiritual dimension of CTC. Harmony is how everything fits together for an individual. This is striving to find a sense of completion. Harmony refers to finding the work that will bring about a true sense of appreciation and understanding. A career that meets a client's values, interests, and abilities can create harmony. Also, the spiritual dimension of purpose can also play a part in an individual's harmony. For example, meaningful work can contribute to a sense of appreciation. The last and fifth spiritual dimension is calling. This term may seem familiar to some of us, or we may have heard of this before. Calling is the idea that individuals often perceive that what they are doing with their lives is the result of being called. Well, to be more specific, calling may be expressed as a sense of vocation, a mission to be pursued, a cause to be supported, an idea to be promulgated, a role to be fulfilled, or if the client says, this is what I was meant to do, or if the client says, this job fits me like a glove. The idea of calling can be connected with harmony and purpose as well. It can also have a feeling of being pulled or pushed into a certain career choice. Just to recap real quick, according to CTC, connection, purpose, transcendence, harmony, and calling are all important spiritual aspects that can influence the career decision-making process for clients.
So I'm going to go over chaos theory and change. This research is based off of Bright and Pryor, who also pretty much came up with the chaos theory itself. In the counseling environment, just like in life, change is going to be constant. So what they do is they identified 11 different phases of change, which they coined as shift work, to help counselors be able to plan and work with the changing environment that is going to happen during the counseling. Bright and Pryor define shift work as all activities in which career counselors engage to assist their clients develop skills of adaptation and resilience. And in their research, they came up with 11 different shifts. The first shift is from prediction to prediction and pattern making. Shift 2 is from plans to plans and planning. Shift 3, from narrowing down to being focused on openness. Shift 4, from control to controlled flexibility. Shift 5, from risk as failure to risk as endeavor. Shift 6, from probabilities to probable possibilities. Shift 7, from goals, roles, and routines to meaning, mattering, and black swans. Shift 8, from informing to informing and transforming. Shift 9, from normative thinking to normative and scalable thinking. Shift 10, from knowing in advance to living with emergence. And the last shift is from trust as control to trust as faith. Shift 1, from prediction to prediction of pattern making. Career counseling is more future focused than other forms of counseling. A lot of counseling, I imagine, would take place in current events or past events, maybe not focusing as much on the future as you would whenever you're trying to help someone find a career that's suitable to them and that they would find fulfilling. In order to do this, a couple of tools that were identified are interest inventories. You have the career style questionnaire, career scope, which is tailored more to high school students, and guiding circles. Guiding circles is tailored more for the minority population. You also have the My Systems of Career Influence and the Pattern Identification exercise. Those are just a few tools that you can use when you're helping a client move from just trying to predict what's going to happen to actually making a pattern, seeing what it is that interests them and what they may want to move towards as an ultimate career. Shift 2 is from plans to plans and planning. Support and counsel clients in the development, redevelopment, deployment, and abandonment of plans. You're going to encourage creativity and dexterity in plans. And so as you're helping a client just plan, you really want to help them get ready for the full stages of planning. They're going to develop their plan, which they may have already worked on. They may be stuck on it. So you may help them revise it in the redevelopment stage. You're going to help them actually put that plan into practice with deployment. And unfortunately, occasionally, as we all know, plans don't always work out. And so you'll have to help them as they abandon a plan and start the process over. Shift 3 is from narrowing down to being focused on openness. You want to work with your client to foster imaginative strategies, consider the advantages of being undecided, and be open to opportunities as the reward. Too often, we may be in the habit of narrowing down to the same strategy. You're going to do the same steps over and over and over. And so as you foster imaginative strategies, what you're doing is you're helping them to open up to more possibilities. You're helping them to view different ways to find the right career for them. And in that, you're also going to be able to discuss the advantages of being undecided, such as, you're open to more opportunity, you're open to more possibilities whenever you're undecided because you're not focused on just that one career. And you want to make sure that the client is always open to the opportunities. Something may come up that they hadn't planned, or maybe it's due to their hard work and their planning and the work that you've done with them, but you want them to see those as the reward for all the hard work that they've put in. Shift 4 is from control to controlled flexibility. Control is related to the need for predictability, and it's also related to anxiety and occupational stress as you try to control things that you may not be able to. And so ways to change to controlled flexibility include developing strategies with your client, helping your client to stay optimistic and to become more self-efficient. Help them to explore their curiosity and push them to stay persistent and to take risks whenever they may not want to. You're going to have to push them out of their comfort zones a little bit whenever you're doing the risk taking, though. Another thing to consider too is optimism is going to be difficult because, especially if they've been looking for a long time or if they're just really unsure what they're going to do, there's going to be times where they may become discouraged. And so you'll have to work with them to, from shift 3, keep that openness. Don't let the failure demotivate them. Another issue you might have to face is with the self-efficacy. The client may become reliant on you as a counselor to do certain things for them, or they may not want to take the next step without you. And so really you may end up doing the work for them. And so what you want to do through the entire process is you want them to do the work. You want to make sure that they're the ones that are pushing to meet their goals. An advantage you can carry from shift 3 to shift 4 is the curiosity. That openness should help to inspire curiosity in other careers that the client may not have thought of. So those are just a few ways you can tie in the different shifts because they should go from one to the next as you're helping the client move towards their ultimate career goals. Shift 6 is from probabilities to probable possibilities. This focuses on probabilities, risks, self-limiting futures. Focusing on possibilities may lead to frustration, hesitation, and the sense of being overwhelmed. And the client has to view probabilities and possibilities equally to avoid frustration and self-limiting behaviors. You don't want the client to just sit here and say, well, this may happen. This is something that could happen. What you want is for the client to sit there and view every probability as a possibility for success. And you're still going to have to work with them because not all of them may be successful. You're still going to have to work with the risk as an endeavor. But you have to help the client to be willing to push past, well, this might be a possibility, or this might be something I would want. You need to help them move beyond the probability and get them to pursue it more, be more focused on their pursuit. Shift 7 is from goals, roles, and routines to meaning, mattering, and black swans. In this, you're going to reduce complex choices to the simplest terms, which can lead clients to be trapped into the goal, role, or routine attractors. It can also lead the client to underestimate change. You want to encourage clients to explore uncertainty and develop opportunity awareness. And you also want to encourage an attitude of acknowledging the unplanned as inevitable. As far as encouraging clients to explore uncertainty and develop opportunity awareness, that's kind of, to me, that's what you're building up from through all of these phases, is you're helping push the client really past their comfort zone. That way they can actually attain their career goals. And that encourage an attitude of acknowledging the unplanned as inevitable. The client is going to have to continue to view that risk and the planning the possibilities. All of that's going to have to play into helping the client to see the unplanned is going to happen. There may be setbacks, but the unplanned does not necessarily have to be a negative. There are positive events that happen that are unplanned, and you have to help the client to be prepared to embrace those. Shift 8 is from informing to informing and transforming. The information age has brought about unprecedented access to information, and that's been useful for counselors and clients. One way that's been useful is now counselors are able to provide a more affordable way for clients to receive career counseling. It's also made it where clients can use social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of that, to create all of these contacts and all these networks that are going to help them to achieve their career goals. So you don't want to just give them nothing but information, but you want to use that information to help them to actually make a plan, pursue the plan, and create connections through social media that may help them to achieve their goal. Shift 9 is from normative thinking to normative and scalable thinking. It's so easy to look at the bell-shaped curve and think that everything should be in that, and that the unthinkable happening or these negative events, they should be the outliers. But it's important to remember that the world is not perfect, and you're not always going to have that bell-shaped curve. And so you need to recognize that the world is complex and scalable. It's ever-changing. And so it's more important to recognize the opportunities and threats from living in this world, especially for your client. Just because it's not a normal bell-shaped curve, just because your client doesn't fit into that, doesn't mean that they can't be successful. Shift 10 is from knowing in advance to living with emergence. Knowing in advance can lead to stagnation, stalling, and pre-verification. Action is a way of gathering information to inform future strategies. Counselors will work on strategies to boost client self-efficacy or tolerance of ambiguity, develop a strong sense of purpose while recognizing that there are no guarantees. And so as you go through these phases, it seems like there's a lot of common trends. Whenever you know something is going to happen, you may just sit on it. You may not be worried about it, and you could wait until the last minute to prepare for it. And so what you want is you want the client to always be ready for a possibility or something to come up. You want them to be ready for it. You want them to be planned for it. And so that's also one reason why self-efficacy is so important, that you can't let the client just rely on you, because they may have something pop up that they were not expecting, and they need to be able to handle it on their own. It's important to remember that we're not always going to be there for them, and so we want them to be able to handle it on their own. This is really, these 11 shifts are helping clients to have the tools that they need to be successful even after the career has started. And the final shift is from trust is control to trust is faith. Trust is central to the counseling relationship. Trust is faith recognizes the limits of the counselor's knowledge and foresight. The counselor will act ethically and responsibly for the client's best interests. Trust should be formed as faith instead of control. And the difference in trust is control and trust is faith is that trust is faith encourages the client to overcome fear through courage. An example that Brighton Pryor provided is the confidentiality. Confidentiality in the counseling world is not absolute. There are things that may not be able to remain confidential. And so you want to make sure that the client trusts you, but you want them to have the limit of that. You want them to understand that not everything they say is going to be confidential. You want the client to understand that they can trust you to help them and to have their best interest in mind and not your own. What we may see as positive for the client could be completely different from what they see. And so it's important to keep in mind what their goals are, what it is that they are hoping to get out of this, and to work together as a team to help them to gain the skills necessary to attain their goal, even if you may think that they should possibly be pursuing something different. So those are the 11 shifts that Brighton Pryor discussed in working with chaos theory.
So I'm going to wrap this whole PowerPoint presentation up for you guys and hit some key spots. So in conclusion, like I said earlier, the chaos theory was first published in 2003, and they've been working on it since. I think the recent one was 2014. It's the last article I've seen. And they did it to address shortcomings of other traditional approaches. So they developed the chaos theory in response to other theories not incorporating basically life and how it's actually lived into career decision making and career development. And life involves complex changes, so they really wanted to incorporate all the nitty-gritty components of life, whether that be just any kind of event, basically life event, whether good or bad, can change your life. And so they came up with the career development strategy, which includes 9 steps to help guide people along their career paths, incorporating key components like making failure survivable. And since humans are complex individuals, patterns emerge in our behavior, which is subject to change. These patterns of behavior are what Brighton Pryor called attractors, and they influence decision-making or career choices. Well, attractors that influence decision-making and career choices. Excuse me. Which also makes this theory different from linear view, because the theory acknowledges and recognizes unpredictability, minimal effort that can yield big results, controlling a problem can make it worse, and they address complex problems with hard, thought-out solutions. They also address in this theory spirituality. Like in the previous slide, it was another influence which answers questions like, how am I connected to this world? How do I feel of use of purpose? Is there a greater power? Am I making sense of the world? And what is my calling in life? According to Pryor and Briggs, this can impact how a person chooses a career. These questions can impact a person and how they choose their career. These questions correspond with the 5 spiritual dimensions mentioned earlier in this presentation, which were connection, purpose, transcendence, harmony, and calling. And they also suggest using shift work, which can help clients adapt and be resilient while figuring out the changing world in relations to their career paths. And then it basically lets them explore ideas or uncertainty and welcoming it with new, open, and new possibilities. So Pryor and Bright really wanted to answer or to really address life and all its challenges, unlike the other theories which just answered the immediate challenges of making core decisions, and that was it. And they just didn't think that it related well to how life is actually lived. So I actually want to show you guys a video, and you can skip through it, but I think Bright is the one who made the video, so I feel like it's very explanatory about the theory in a different kind of light. So here it is. So this page is supposed to have a video on it that is called Where Will You Be? And Jim Bright posted this on his YouTube channel, and I invite you to watch it or click through it. Hopefully it works on here, but I don't know if it will or not. Hopefully you'll be able to watch this video. It was very informative. It has a lot of good information on it, and if not, then I'd check it out on YouTube if you want some more information about this theory.